السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. مرحبا بالجميع. Great. So what do we have for today? Today, inshallah, we are going to finish the part that is related to ISO, so that we can start with other parts. So from last time, we just showed that we after, it's not after, but part of mentioning the context of the organization, you also need to mention the scope of your work. What is your scope? What do you sell, and what do you do, and what you do not do? ISO standard puts standards as a general requirement for every organization, small or big organization, which means that sometimes there are a lot of details that is not applicable to my organization. So if I want to gain the ISO 9000 certificate, I can gain that certificate without satisfying some of those standards. Why? Because I mentioned very clearly that these are not within my scope. Okay, so if these were the standards that I have here, if these are the standards, there are some of those details that does not apply to me. Of course, like we have covered the context of the organization. However, there are much more details in each part of these. Like we have explained the philosophy of each part of the context of organization. I gave you the idea of each part of these generally. There are much more details within each one of them, in which we will not really cover in details because it will take a lot of time to do that. We did cover it as a concept before when we studied the quality in our course. So part of what is in the quality in ISO 9001, including the context of organization, of course, we already mentioned the risk-based thinking. Last time I went very quickly within the table where I mentioned that, let me show you here, the risk treatment, risk analysis treatment plan. Okay, so, and here the risks. So the risk is part of the context of organization, and we need to consider that as well. And the risk-based thinking simply means that you are finding that there's a problem that you could suffer because of that risk. For example, Corona is considered as a risk for many organizations, right? Because you have less buyers, less people to buy. You may close at any moment because of the numbers are going up and up. You may also talk about, there are many, for example, there are many schools that are suffering because there are many people who are not paying their fees on time. Actually, there are big groups of students who are shifting from private schools to public schools. Why? Because they say that, well, the service I'm expecting from this school is when it is open, but while it is closed, everything is on online. My son or my daughter is not gaining as much, so I'm going to take her to the public school. So I have seen examples of that. So these are considered risks to the school itself. So they need to think about it. So risk-based thinking enables an organization to determine the factors that could cause its process and its quality management system to deviate from the planned results. I have a planned results to achieve. Now I'm deviated from that because of that risk. So what I want to do, I want to put in place preventive controls. I want to do something to minimize the negative effects of that risk, and to make maximum use of opportunities as they arise. So this is where we talk about the risk, and again, it is also mentioned in the table. Now, how to discover risks? There are some areas where you need to look at. You may discover the risks. For example, hazard or incident logs. Hazard or incident logs. And what I mean by that is that you have some hazards or logs. Let me go to the word logs before. There's one person or the operator, for example, he's sitting in the plant, and then he finds that there's an incident, and this incident, it should be considered, and he's the one who's registering all the incidents, and this incident is called the incident log or the incident register. So for example, he found out that H2S, for example, this is something big, but there's something else. A piece of iron on the way, while he was driving, he dripped on it, and that is something that he should consider. He saw some kind of a spark in a place. All these are considered as what? As incidents. So he's registering those. Now, while he's registering, by the end of the year or by the end of the month, when you come and you want to see what are the risks, so the incident logs are considered a good information or source of information to find out the risks. The audit reports, that means someone went to a place and he's auditing if everything is according to the standards. Now, if things are not according to the standards, he writes his audit report where there are deviations from the expected process map or expected plan. So he's writing the deviations. Now, these deviations, some of them could be considered as a risk. Again, what I'm trying to say is not that anything wrong is a risk. It's not that, because we make mistakes. But maybe we are doing something wrong again and again because there is a risk. And that risk is making us deviate from the planned results. And this is where we need to look at the reasons. The customer complaints, customers' complaints. So if the customer complain, which is normal, it happens. But if you always get the same complaint again and again, you have an idea that there is a problem there. And when you search more, you may consider that there's a risk of, for example, we don't have a good connection to customers. Talking about students, they always complain about something specific about the registration. And if we don't consider their complaints, well, let me look at the risk. What is the risk? The risk, the students will not register on time. The students will not register the courses that are expected according to their academic plan. Their students are going to stay more inside University of Bahrain, which means that is a risk to me as well, as University of Bahrain. Why? Because I don't have enough money. I don't have enough place. I don't have enough faculty members. So I need to consider that risk and put action plans to overcome that risk. Okay, great. So other points that could be considered here could be accreditation documents, past surveys, newspapers, any information of that would be satisfiable to get something about the risks. Okay, my computer just got stuck. I want to go to the next page. I want to go to the next page. It's not going. Okay, what should I do? Okay, so bear with me 1 minute. I'm going to close the PowerPoint and then I'm going to open it again. Okay, what should I do? Okay, if it doesn't go the easy way, hard way. Okay, yeah, cool. So PowerPoint and okay, PowerPoint again. Yes, please. Yep, that's the one. It's forgot. We are in a different PowerPoint. I think so. It's this one. Auto recover version. Okay. So where were we? Yep. Okay, so we were here. So the next slide is telling us that while we identified risk, sometimes we need to go to more details for all the stages of risk. And actually, I used to give the students how to do each one of these, but I think so that was too much. So first, what is the problem? I need to assess the problem, identify exactly where is the problem, analyze it, evaluate it, treat it. It's as simple as anything, Yani. The example that I used to give is that I want to cross the road for a meeting. However, the road is very busy road. So there's a risk that you get an accident. Now, if you assess it, well, if it is rainy, it's going to be a more problem. There are many cars. My meeting is at 12 o'clock, so it's very busy. So when you assess that, you find out that the risk is even high. It's not low, it is high. So I identify the risk. I write it that it is very risky to cross the road at 12 o'clock at a time that we have expectations of rain and a slippery floor and so on. So you identify it. Now you analyze. Well, what should you do? You're putting some kind of ideas here, analyzing it, and then you evaluate it. Evaluate what? You evaluate your solutions. So in risk analysis, you're analyzing, coming up with few solutions. Risk evaluation, you come up with a solution. And then you treat it. But you don't need to memorize all what I have just mentioned in details, but this is the risk management process. This is the risk management process in which we start from knowing what is the risk till treating the risk. And you can see some numbers here on the side, and these numbers reflect the clause المواد القانونية that is written in ISO 9001, where it is written at 5.2, communication and consultation, and then you go to the next clause where you talk about the risks, risk management process, 5.3, 5.4, going down to 5.5, and then 5.6, monitoring and review. Of course, monitoring and review for this whole process, how to monitor. Monitor it, that means you already have a plan for your risk, that you'll always do and treat your risk with. Now, usually in most companies, this is what they do. This is what they use. It is simple, it is straightforward. And actually this is used also for the HAZOP study, something very simple. If you know what is HAZOP study, it's a table that you do. Actually, it's just a study, but the study is using a table to study the hazards. In this case, we are studying the risks. For plants, they are studying the hazards. It is very similar, a very similar table, very similar. Looks very alike. If you're going to take process safety one day with me or with someone else, this is what we are going to teach you, part of the course, of course. There's only one chapter. We study 8 chapters. So what do we have here? For example, if I have a risk that is related to technology, and then what are those risks? Confidential information being disclosed. So because everything now is technology, there's a problem that there's a lot of information that can be easily leaked to outsiders, and that could be a problem. So who's the owner? AB. What should I do? I should put a clear policy on access control in place. Okay, so I should have a clear policy that the person who's going to work on this technology, he should sign a paper very clearly that he would not expose any information. And actually, this is really done. Any people who really work on classified information, they need to sign that agreement or sign that policy. And part of their signature, if they do sign it, that means if they leak any information, they are going to be accountable for what they have done. Musa'alin. That means they can be pulled to some kind of jurisdiction to be punished. Let me say by law, to be punished by law. He may go to jail, or she may go to jail because of that. So part of a risk treatment to that problem, to have a clear policy. Data is always encrypted. Audit logs. There are always logs, of course, but now we're talking about audit logs. For example, we do some kind of audit logs. It's not an old practice, it's a new practice. I mean, maybe 10 years ago. So one of the things that we were discussing is that, are we sure that at University of Bahrain that students' grade does not change? Yani, students get a D. It happens that this D changed to a B. Well, if you think about it, they changed it after 2 semesters, for example. No one knows about it. It's only the student and his friend who's sitting inside the registration office changed the grade. And of course, how did we discover that? Through audit logs. So you do some kind of audit just to make sure that all what was entered is written there. Okay, because there's a log exactly what was entered at a certain time. You cannot delete that. You cannot delete the history. And then it happened that we caught one of the students who did that actually. So there are sometimes violations, if I would say. It happens. So this audit log protects that you always have the information confidential, and so on. Now, what is the likelihood of this thing to happen? Out of 5. Well, 4 out of 5. I'm not talking about my example, but here we are talking about their example. It's 4 or 5 likely to be happening. What will be the consequences? Bad consequences or no consequences? So sometimes it's very likely to happen, but because the consequences are too low, it's not important. So it will be 4 multiplied by 1. But in this case, the consequences are too high. That means it will really affect my organization badly. So now if it's likely to happen, very likely to happen, and the consequences are high, 4 times 5 is 20, which means it's very high, and I need to put actions, serious actions for that. And I put it as a priority number 1. Why? Because it has the highest level of risk. And then you go, for example, to a second one, which is related to supply, and the risk of likelihood to consequences is 16. And so on, till you prioritize them and you put the main risks that you're going to manage. Now, if you're going to take action, you may take action on all of them, but sometimes you don't have the time, you don't have the energy, you are very limited with resources. So you may decide that you only deal with the first 2, which you find out that they have a very high level of risk. And then if you finish up with those, and then you're going to go to the next 2. So the most important goes first, and then the next ones go next. So that is kind of a risk register. It's always the likelihood, the consequence identifies the area of risk, the area of risk, or the severity of the risk. Okay, so I think so you already had, you see something like that in a risk profile for those who are overweighted. So they say that you're overweighted 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, so they put the weight here, or they put the BMI index, I think, so I can't remember. here, and then they put on the y-axis something related to the diseases and so on, and they put here that it is safe here, you will not get any kind of diabetes, but if you have high weight, you have a high possibility of getting diabetes, or a high likelihood of getting diabetes. So this kind of figure, they use it much to identify the areas where you have high risk. Okay, so that is all somehow about the risk and the context of organization and the scope. Now, at the end of all of these risks and of the context of organization policy, you need to write the objectives. Okay, well, so you already did your job very clearly. You know your customers, interested parties. So you know all your interested parties. You know what is your context, which means your strength, your weaknesses. You know how to deal with each one of your interested parties. You know what are the regulations by the environment. You also know what are the risks. Now, knowing all this, please write your objectives. Okay, so now you're going to write your objectives. One of the main objectives, of course, is to meet the customer requirements. But of course, you're going to write quality objectives that may be related to the risks, or you write quality objectives that may be related to the interested parties, two or one of them or three of them. So quality objectives may be established to measure the performance of products, processes, customer satisfaction, suppliers, use of resources, overall performance. What by the end of the year, if I can by the end of the year, I want to see if I achieved my objectives. Actually, what I want by the end of the year, I want to see the performance of my organization. Now, what is the definition of your performance of your organization? It is your quality objectives. So you're going to write those quality objectives to reflect what is important and not important. And of course, examples of those, we already said that it could be related to product, the process, customer, supplier, resources. It could be related to any of those. So I don't want to have, for example, for a product, I want to reduce the defect rates that I have. For the process, I want to reduce the waste. Okay, for the customer, I want to have better product returns. I want reduction in complaints. For suppliers, I don't want any problems with suppliers. Reduction in the defects. I want improved on-time delivery. For resources, I want everything's available. All personnel are fit. I have enough. All of them are competent, my resources. No one is absent. Everyone is efficient. So you're going to write your objectives that at the end of the day reflect the performance of your day. If you want an advice about quality objectives, we are not going to take the slide. I'm just mentioning that you may hear about it, but I'm mentioning it to those who will hear it again and again, because many people, if you go with them in ministries or any place, they like to make a fuss about this, and they tell you the quality objectives, not the quality objectives. The objectives must be smart. We must have smart objectives, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-based. Wow, a discovery. Sorry for saying this, but because sometimes you know something that is 20 years back, and then you find out someone telling you after 20 years that he discovered something new, and he wants to tell you that this is very important for everything. And you already know from 20 years that it is important, but with time you know that it's not for everything. And it's not always possible to write a smart objective. And actually it's not as that much important to write a smart objective than to know which part of those elements are important for your objective. I can't go to the details of that, but that goes with experience. There are lots of details. However, just to know the meaning of it for you, your objective needs to be specific. So you want to lose weight. Hello. Now, lose weight is good, but if you say I want to be fit, the word fit is not very clear, because it means lose weight. It means also food. It also means that you go to the gym. It means that you will do some kind of sport. It means a lot of things, right? So when I say lose weight, it becomes more specific. Now going to measurable, by how much you want to lose weight. You want to lose weight 5 kg or 10 kg. So when you put I want to lose weight, I want to lose 5 kg, now that is measurable. Now is that achievable? Well, I want to lose 30 kg. Well, 30 kg is too much. It's not achievable. Okay, it's very difficult. Mention something that is achievable, because if you put too high, you may not achieve it. So okay, now I want to lose 5 kg. Now this is achievable. 5 kg within 1 month. Now that is time-based. Time-based, that means I have put a goal that I can achieve within 1 month. Being realistic, it is very related to the person that we are, that it is possible to happen or not possible to happen. So all of these elements, they all contribute to a SMART objective. What I have mentioned is a SMART objective. If you remove any element of those, it doesn't become SMART, because if you do not specify within 1 month, it does not tell you. And this is what happens, right? I want to use 5 kg. Okay, if you don't mention the time, the first month goes, the second month goes, the third month goes, and you don't achieve that. Okay, so, and it happens to students, but it's not only to students, it happens to everyone. It's like that. I want to fix the AC at my home, for example. Okay, fix the AC. I did not mention a time. If I didn't mention a time, first month goes, second month goes, and the AC is still not working, for example. So all these things happen, and because that you don't have SMART objectives. So it's very important to be specific, measurable, and so on. Okay, so that is enough. All of this is just addition. So what we have covered here is mainly 9001, 2015. I said that 9000 are just the fundamentals and vocabulary. It is just the vocabulary of the words. What we have covered is 9001, 2005. There are other ISOs in which there are guidelines to help you. So they are written here. There are guidelines that could help you within the ISO. Okay, now going to the ISO checklist, which has the details. So when I go to any organization as a consultant, this is what I do. I take this sheet. I have another sheet, something like that sheet. So I have this sheet in front of me. Let me go just down here. Okay. And then what I start to do, I start going to the clauses one by one. Now, what I have here, let me see the X and Y axis. So what I have here, I have for the columns, the processes that is in the organization. So for example, I went to an organization, D1 al-Khidma, for example. D1 al-Khidma doesn't have production. I went to Bobco. So it has management, sales, engineering, customer satisfaction, purchasing, production, test, pack and ship, HR, maintenance. So they have all these departments, all these processes. Now, for all these processes, I start going throughout my clauses and make sure that they are satisfying all these. Of course, if there are any discrepancy, I'm going to write what is the discrepancy, and I'm going to mention the number of that clause, It is telling, it's just like telling that this guy, okay, so it's like telling this guy, you are not satisfying 5.3 and 5.3.1 or 5.3.2. So you're not satisfying these two. So we cannot give you the certificate. So in other words, you're telling them that if you want to get the certificate, you need to satisfy these two. You need to satisfy these two clauses. So this checklist is something that helps me as a consultant to identify what are the areas that they must satisfy before they get the accreditation of ISO. They get the certification. They don't call it accreditation, they call it certification. Okay. So the context of the organization, if you can see here, the organization is context, expectation of the interested parties, the scope of the quality management system, the processes that are in my quality management system. So all of these, what we have covered so far in details, and I cover those in details because they are the main base of our ISO. What is in the rest here is just details. It's simple to understand. I mean, you can understand it by yourself if you read it. So it doesn't need a lot of explanation. And actually, all of what's written here, it is explained the new requirement, and this is why I explained it as well. Now, خلينا نرجع. So what do I have here? I have my processes, and I have my quality system, my quality management system requirements written as the clause numbers and the clause description. Where you see D here, for example, is just an example that they have a problem here. Okay, problem, a deficiency in where? In the purchasing department. So this is like a summary of what he did or this person did. Well, now to go to the details of that, this is just a summary. What I'm showing you here is just a summary. You see how long is that? There are a lot of details. You just gonna go into more and more details. Now, all what was written at the top there, how do you assess? How do you analyze? You ask those kind of questions. You don't need to ask the person in front of you. You fetch, you search for the documentation, and you may ask just to get an answer for each one of these. So, for example, has the organization identified all external and internal issues related to its purpose and direction? Internal and external issues is something like to do with what we said, the context of the organization when we were talking about the SWOT analysis. So did they do any kind of analysis, whatever model they had used, but did they identify what are the internal and external issues? Going 4.2, for example, has the you see at 4.2, the title is understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties. Has the organization identified all relevant interested party requirements? So that table, which is in your assignment in the case study, did they identify who are the interested party and what are the requirements? How is the information monitored? Okay, how is the information monitored? Because part of the table explains how is the information monitored. So what they're going to do here, they're going to fill in this. So they're going to write if they have a problem here and the explanatory notes. For students, last year I used to tell them to write here NCR, non-conformity. That means they have a problem here. And the word non-conformity is equal to the discrepancy, in this case, the example I gave. So this is like D. And then they write here the reasons why. Okay, the reasons why there's a discrepancy. For this semester, I decided, because of it's Ramadan, and I think so it was too much as well. So we decided, I decided, sorry. So I decided that it's enough that we already have taken what we have taken in that slide, in that presentation, where we know what is the context of organization. However, we will not go to the details of each part of these. So what I'm showing you now here is just for you to know as a knowledge in this PDF file. So what's in this PDF file is more as a knowledge for you to know what's going on, because it's too much to go through this ISO. ISO is a full course. It takes about 30 hours. Let me say less. It's not that much sometimes. 24 hours, but 24 hours means 24 lectures, يعني, even more. So we are talking about really a heavy course here. Well, let me make use of my time, of what is left, to show you something here, even that it will not be part of the exam, but I think so it's good to look at it. So 4.2 is understanding. Again, let me go to the title. So it's context of the organization. Under context of organization, you need to understand the organization and its context, internal and external resource issues, the needs and expectation of interested party, the scope of the quality management system, and what, and that's all. And the quality management system and its processes. That means it identify what are the processes, what are the risks, and it's written here. Have the process of the organization been identified? The processes. I have a purchasing process, I have an HR process, so I'm going to mention all my processes. And then I'm going to mention here, if you can see, risk and opportunities as well. And so on. Now, leadership. So what are the questions related to leadership? For example, has top management demonstrated leadership by taking the accountability of the process? Did they establish the quality policy? Did they communicate the quality policy to the employees? Let me go to another one. Did they promote continual improvement? Did they engage in the process effectiveness? So you can see how many questions there. And the organization, to get the certification, they need to show how do they satisfy all those. So they need to have everything written in place to show that they satisfy all these. And now you can see why ISO certification is not that easy, but it's important. Why it's important? Because it aligns all your processes. It tells you what you should do. Okay, it tells you exactly what you should do. Now, this is a checklist. If you go to the quality manual, these are written as statements. But this is usually a checklist that I use when I audit organizations. So if I go to customer focus to a certain organization, I'm going to, for example, I go to University of Bahrain. Has top management demonstrated leadership by identifying customer requirements? They know what are the requirements of the students. They know what are the regulatory requirements regarding students, statutory requirements, the risk and opportunities. Did they write all these or not? Did they focus on providing products and services? That means the students' requirements. So are these written or not? So I start auditing and making sure that they are satisfying all these. Going to number 6. There are details in number 6 that are related to the planning. Planning includes the whole process, the whole plan, and the risks as well. Let me go to an example here. Has the organization planned to achieve its quality objectives? So you have a plan to achieve your objectives by identifying what has to be done, what are the resources for this to be done, who is responsible to it, what is the due date for achievement, who will evaluate the results, and when are the results to be obtained. So you can see the details, just going to more details for every part. Talking about support, and in this case support, I just want to make sure, for example, I go to chemical engineering department. Has the University of Bahrain identified the infrastructure needed for effective operation of the quality management system, including maintenance of the equipment in the lab, buildings and associated utilities, which means air conditioner in building 27 and 28, for example, right? So transportation, information and communication technology. So did they identify the infrastructure for effective operation? You need an effective operation of all those. And again, and more details for 7. There are lots of details. You can see how big is this document. Number 8 is the operation of everything. We already mentioned the operation of all your processes. So what is the operation of HR? What is the operation of students registration? What is the operation of student failure? What is the operation of putting a grade? What is the operation for a faculty member to be hired at University of Bahrain, and so on. So you're going to put all the operations here. Let me take an example. Are requirements related to the product? Now here the operations, I already went to one of them which is not applicable, because here there are a lot of details in 8.2.3 that are related to delivery. When I go to University of Bahrain, maybe the delivery is not applicable to me because I don't have products to sell. Only maybe if I have books in future where I'm going to deliver, I may consider something like that. But I'm just mentioning that I may exclude this from my scope and not include it. Because there are a lot of things that are related to design of products. In my case, I have design of services. So anything related to design of products, I'm going to remove that out. Of course, that is 8. And then you go to number 9, performance evaluation. I already gave an example of that. I come by the end of the year and I just want to make sure if my customers are satisfied. But if you want to know in more details, it's written there. So has the organization identified what has to be monitored, the methods for monitoring? It's not by the end of the year we sit, and this is what happens in many places. They just sit together and they discuss with each other. Did we achieve our goals by this year or not? Someone says yes, someone says no, and someone says that someone told me that this happened and that. No, I want to know, do you have methods clearly stated for monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation? So you have written clearly how will you evaluate your performance. It's written. And I'm going to see if you're using those tools that you have written as in your quality manual, or yes, in your quality manual. What is your internal audit job, and so on. Number 10 is the improvement. After you do your performance, you improve. Now, if you go to the details of the questions, it says that now you have outputs. Who is responsible for the improvement? Who will do the improvement? Do you have resources to do the improvement? So you can see how details we go and ask and ask and ask till we get everything very clearly if there's a problem or not. Thank you very much. I think that is good enough. I was running. Do you have any question? Okay, great. So that PDF was useful. You can use it in future, but as you know that it will not be part of the exam. And that's good enough for today. We are finished with ISO, so we are going to start next time with the reliability, I think so, which is something else, or the fault mode effect analysis. All the best. Thank you very much. See you inshallah on Sunday. Mass.